When sleep has ceased, the world appearance rises. When that ceases, there is pure consciousness. It's when involvement in notions of a world appearance cease, when we manage to step back from them, then we have the realization of pure consciousness. This is actually turiya. When asked, well, what is the nature of consciousness? What is the nature of the self? The traditional answer is neti, neti, not this, not this, not this, not this. Because if you answer the question, you're conceptualizing it, and you cannot conceptualize it. So you can say it's one thing, and then you say it's not that thing. This is often the pattern in the Yoga Vasistha. That nothing, nothing is between apostrophes, that nothing which remains after everything has been negated as not this, is pure consciousness. The entire universe is but pure consciousness, as it was and as it is. Even when there is perception of forms and apprehension of notions and concepts, that consciousness alone exists. Consciousness is awareness. Within awareness arise notions, concepts. Awareness identifies with these notions. That becomes the reality. And awareness forgets its awareness. But there's only awareness. There's only consciousness. Knowing this, be free from condition, even while perceiving the objects of the senses, just as a man who sleeps is yet inwardly awake. So a man who sleeps and who's dreaming, that's the reality. The reality is not the dream. The reality is his innate awakeness, which will assert itself at some point. Remaining inwardly silent like a rock, talk, walk, drink and take. This world has not been created at all, for it has no cause. No effect arises without a cause. Hence consciousness remains as consciousness without change. This is the trouble with stories about the world, which assume that it must have begun at some point, whether these are mythological stories, religious stories, or scientific stories. I suspect that science isn't quite rational in its assumption of a beginning. I suspect this hunt for the beginning of the universe is actually the leftover influence of Judeo-Christian teachings, which assume that there was a beginning. A lot of scientists seem to have taken that assumption on board. But even scientists seem to be saying nowadays that things are popping out of nothing. That little subatomic particles are popping in and out of existence all the time. Well, that cannot be so, because they cannot be popping out of nothing. What they're popping out of is not nothing then. If they're actually coming from nothing, then that nothing must be something. It could be a very subtle nothing, of course. It's like the nothing which a dream comes from. Where do the rocks in a dream come from? Where do the trees in a dream come from? Where does the distinction between the rock and the trees come from? That nothing is consciousness, isn't it? Hence consciousness remains as consciousness without change. Consciousness isn't changed by the fact that it dreams, is it? Any more than it's changed by the whole phenomenal universe. When its experience of its own inherent potentialities is continued, it appears as this world. Thus the subjective world has not been created at all, does not exist, and will not come into being. It will not perish either, for how can non-existence perish? What appears to be is a reflection of consciousness within itself. This is how it's often described, and I must admit to having a problem with this in the past. I didn't find this way of describing it particularly useful, for a very good reason. However, since there is no duality, There is neither a reflection nor an appearance. So that's it. Awareness is reflecting in itself. It reflects itself in its notions, then it believes its notions. But these notions are also awareness. But we need to leave all that behind, leave that way of talking behind, and just come back to awareness. Awareness which has got no reflections and no appearance either. Who knows whether what is real or unreal? We don't get caught up in that discrimination. We can drop it. Who knows why and how a man dreams, or what the dreams are, except that they are his own consciousness? We don't need to get caught up on why a dream does what it does. If you're some kind of cognitive scientist, fair enough, you can explore that level of existence. But spiritually, we don't need to bother about it. We can leave it behind. All we need to know is that it's consciousness, and be conscious of consciousness. The Creator and all things are but pure consciousness. They're all notions. When this is realized, it is known as Brahman. When it is not realized, it is known as illusion, Maya, ignorance, and the world. It is that consciousness alone that knows itself as I am mountain, I am Rudra, I am the ocean, and I am the cosmic person. Just as a person while dreaming thinks that all these exist in his dream. Everything is notional. Consciousness identifies with its notions. This is what these phrases mean. I am mountain. I am Rudra. It's a particular god. I am the ocean. They're all notions. And when a notion arises, consciousness naturally identifies with it, and it gives it some reality, a reality which we might then describe as real or imaginary, and so on. All external objects are reflected in the mirror of one's consciousness, which when inquired into is seen immediately. When thus investigated, their true nature as pure consciousness is realized. And this is the point. You don't have to take any of this on board. You don't have to take anything that's said here as making a philosophical case. Look into it. Look into the reality of everything that you believe in and everything that is happening right now. See for yourself.